podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Good evening, welcome along to the Rangers Rabble podcast. Apologies, our members' show ran a little later than we expected, but massive thank you to Wilf, Ian Stewart and David Herd for the members' show, which will be available to everybody on YouTube tomorrow. And for all the members, if you didn't tune in live after this podcast, obviously go back and give that a watch. So many thanks to Ian Stewart and David Herd for that. We don't normally go out on a Wednesday night. However, there's a lot going on. And by the way, that's the reason that we're on at this later time and not our usual time at 7:30. But there's a lot going on. There's a lot of angry supporters. We're out at the Champions League. You'll have seen some stuff today about hirings at Rangers. And I just felt as if everybody needed a wee outlet to get their points across. So get your comments in. If I could ask everybody in the comments, look, we're a Rangers family, let's have discussion, let's have debate, let's be angry, but let's try and get on in the comments. No fighting, try and keep it clean. And me, Connor and Robert will do our best not to have a fight tonight on the podcast as well. But like I say, I am joined by Connor and Robert. Connor was on the reaction to the watch along last night. Robert, you weren't, so I will start off with you. Firstly, how are you?
I'm not bad. Listen, wish I was pulled into this because you know what, you just enjoy your Wednesday night. But it's been too much going on, as you say. Not just at the fall, not going through in the Champions League, but just loads of sort of wee bits and pieces that have broke today. None of it positive, by the way, which I'm sure we'll get to. So, at one point, you spend your evening going to bed raging about a referee, and then that anger's just built and built over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and Robert, I'll just stay with you before I bring Connor in. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger placed at the board. There's anger placed at Clement. There's just anger placed everywhere. And I'll be honest with you, a win over St Johnstone on Saturday is not going to change anything. And God help us on the 1st of September.
No, listen, a win won't change anything, but a defeat might plunge it further in to melting point. You know what they say, a defeat's a catastrophe. So I think putting any blame or anger towards Clement at this stage feels slightly premature, just the ways or the cards he's been dealt with the board. And I mean that just for his initial appointment. Seems to me that we sold something that's turned out to be a completely different reality there. So I'd maybe rein that in slightly. But the board have got so much to answer for. This stems way back to the lack of preparation for the Copeland Road development. Then no CEO replacement. Then obviously these are the wee bits and pieces that I broke today, which I'm sure we'll delve into in a bit more detail. So it's just snowballing, and I feel, you listen to what we spoke about on Monday night's show, the Graham Souness clip, no football and sort of know-how on the board, and it's really showing because they're making, time and time again, mistake after mistake, and we're looking really, really silly. Add to that, as you say, fan base is growing particularly sort of bitter and angry about the whole thing. So it's going to come to a breaking point, and I'm not suggesting it'll be anything like we saw when 10 in a row fell down, but something's got to give, because as you say, you saw fans voting with their feet last night. So yes, I have not combed my hair, Craig. So you saw fans voting with their feet last night. That's going to feed into other bits as well in terms of finances, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So it's a massive melting pot.
I think another reason actually for this show tonight, Connor, and look, everyone who does podcasts on whatever subject it is, right? The people who are on them, hosts, guests, co-hosts, whoever. And by the way, I do just have to say I've got quite bad toothache and I think I've got a hole in my tooth. So if I sound a bit funny or whatever, it's because of that. But yeah, people get criticism. not everyone's always going to like you. If somebody takes a dislike to you on a show, it tends to stick, uh, which is fine, which is absolutely fine. But one comment, Connor, stuck out to me a wee bit. And I didn't watch the podcast back after reading this comment. I just thought to myself, do they have a point? Right? Which is crazy because they don't. But the comment was, what's happened to the Rangers rabble? It used to be honest chat, honest debate, and now they have become a shill for the club. And I read that comment and I went, even if people don't like you, right, which is fine, I'm not a very likable person. Um, to say something like that when I feel like we give fair and honest feedback, and I want to qualify this. This is the longest I'll ever speak, I promise. I want to qualify that by saying, and I actually put a post out on Twitter about this, just because you have a platform, however small, big or small that platform is, right, doesn't mean the stuff that you're saying is right. And it certainly doesn't mean you're important in the slightest. We're just Rangers supporters who talk on YouTube about Rangers. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. I certainly don't think I'm special. Um, Robert probably does because he's a handsome guy, right? But me and Connor don't. No, sorry, Connor. So we are just people on here talking about Rangers and giving the opinions that we feel that we have to give, right? Um, so I read that comment, Connor, in amongst everything else that's happening, and I thought, no, let's get on the show tonight and let's have an honest chat and an honest debate. We'll probably touch on the game last night. We'll probably touch on the manager, but I want to focus this early part of the show on the board, Connor. And I'll be honest with you, and said I done that solo video thing when I was talking about the board, and it just feels like, Connor, just about every decision that they make is wrong. Every time Bennett comes out and speaks, he makes it worse. Um, I don't know where the board go from here because they can't. It's not as if they can't. We can't just say you need to go, you need to get out because then we're relying on somebody else to come in. It's not a player or a manager. It's the board. It's the people who run the club. So I'm feeling a little bit lost right now, Connor.
Well, where to
Feel
start
free to
there?
disagree, by the way, and I hope you do.
Well, listen, I think the first thing to say is that certainly speaking for myself, and I think the other guys that come on here, I will only ever come on here and give you my God's honest opinion. Doesn't mean I'll always be right, but I'll only ever give you my honest opinion. And there's no pub shilling or propaganda and done here. It just isn't how it works. We'll call it like we see it, and people can disagree with that. But the fact is, I think where we're at just now as a club, it's hard to look any further than the decisions the board have made. You can't get away from it. John Bennett, since he came in, has just sleepwalked into shambles after shambles, really. I don't think we can say we're any further forward today than we were when John Bennett walked through the door, on or off the pitch. And that's a real concern. You look at some of the appointments he's made, you look at Beale, the disaster that was, and that was very much, he was their man when he came in the door. It's why he got free rein to run the whole club, basically. And that didn't work. You look at the situation with the stadium right now, again, there are mitigating circumstances, of course, because there's no, contractors and building them up particularly does things happen, delays happen that are out of people's control. But the board really should have been on top of this stuff well before it got to the stage it did. They should have done their homework better, which seems to be a common theme right now with this board, not doing their homework, not making the right decisions. Even when you look on the pitch and the things that have happened there, again, and I think there was a comment earlier which I think was absolutely spot on. When you're in a position, we know when the Champions League qualifiers come up, and we know how important they are to the club in terms of finances, and not getting business done early enough and getting players in the door who can actually, hit the ground running and play from the off. Not throwing everything you've got at it to make sure you qualify for the Premier competition in Europe and get the wealth of riches that come with that, particularly in a season like this when there's extra games that you automatically get by qualifying, whether you get out of the league stage or not, just because the way that's now set up. So, it's a real failure of the club to do that, and it's left us languishing behind at the moment. I do think that some of the criticism and some of the feeling right now, whilst I get it, can go a bit over the top. I think there's people talking about Philippe Clement and his future, his job potentially being at risk and things like that. I personally, and I said this last night, I don't think that's fair. He said about 10 months in the job, a lot of the shambles that's happened in that time isn't much to do with him. Yes, there's mistakes he's made on the park, and we'll absolutely delve into that. Make no mistake about it. I'm not going to shy away from that. I think there are things he's done and things he's said that he's not always, I don't feel, the best at getting his messages across to the fan base.
He shouldn't be immune for criticism, though, Connor.
He's not immune for criticism. I think one of his biggest flaws is he doesn't often get his message across clear enough. He says things sometimes and then he leaves you confused to a degree. You look at the Proper situation, for example, for the other week here. In a press conference on Friday, he says Proper can't play because there's paperwork issues. Then 5 minutes before kick-off on the Saturday, he says, no, we just thought it was best not to play him. And then you hear after it that it was because he had, had to go to IKEA or whatever and get himself settled into his house and things, which is fair enough. But why confuse the pot there? That creates a frustration because that leaves fans thinking, well, why are these players not playing? And you're not getting a clear answer. Even last night, he said similar thing. He said, look, I get it when you're not a manager or you've not been a player and you don't really understand the human body. I get why you would ask and think these questions about why players aren't playing. Again, things like that are it's a strange thing to say because at the end of the day, as manager of Rangers Football Club, him and his team and his scouting team are identifying players to come in the door. And if those players aren't fit, why did they not know that for the start? So absolutely, there is criticisms you can label at Clement's door.
Right, I'm going to bring this quick point up. The stadium issue, I don't really know where I stand on that, right? Because delays happen. I've even said it in the past, delays happen. But then, see the amazing thing that I don't think enough people do in the YouTube world, in the news world, is when you hear things, the ability to change your mind. I think that's huge. And I'm certainly willing to do that. I don't know if there was ways that Rangers could have checked to see if there was possibilities for the stadium materials to be withheld or late or whatever. I don't know if the board could have done anything more than what they've done. That's what the point I'm trying to make in terms of getting us back to Ibrox. And I'm also not sure how big a deal this would be in isolation. But Megatron 1873, I mean, Megatron, what a name. Martin, please highlight the stadium issues could have been avoided. We had a proposal to use a UK firm to design, manufacture and construct the works. It would have been done for the first SPFL game. Now, just quickly on that, Robert, right? Not many businesses will go with UK-based companies nowadays, whether that's right or wrong. It's clearly wrong. You should always invest in the UK, and especially in your own country and stuff like that. But countries use Asian countries because they're cheaper. That's just the bare facts of it. And I don't know, and I'm not saying you're lying, Megatron or anything, but I don't know if that was the case, that it was a proposal to use a UK firm. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. And that also doesn't mean, by the way, that there wouldn't have been hold-ups, Robert, and it might not have been done for the first SPFL game. But just in terms of the stuff that we're going to speak about the board, let's wrap up the stadium. All
right, that's it. Well, listen, we've spoken about the stadium for tens of pods. It filled the summer pretty much. I've saw a snippet of a clip today. I don't know if it's a supporter. Somebody just walked into the ground and started videoing. Looks like there's still plenty to be doing. So it is what it is now. You'd like to think if the Brimley Road's going to be done, then lessons have been learned and they don't make the same mistakes twice. But with this board, you wouldn't put it past them. That's the trouble. Nobody's got any faith anymore. They've literally spent with the Rangers supporters now. The supporters don't believe anything that's coming out. Not that a lot is coming out, by the way. We're sort of we're relying on Megatron to understand the construction deal and what the proposals were. So you've got to take that sort of stuff at face value. As I say, I don't know of any insight into that, but certainly, with the stadium, it is what it is now. I don't think we're going to be in a position with where John Bennett said, it'll be October at the earliest. I don't see that, and I don't think when he made that statement, he actually knew. I think that he was just trying to maybe buy himself and the board some time. So, listen, the stadium's been an absolute mess, and it's actually filtered into other problems. Like I say, last night, you look, we're down on ticket sales. People just aren't buying in to go to Hampden. It's murder to get out of. People already got the precedent set up at Hampden before it's even announced. We didn't want to really go there, but we had to do it out of necessity more than anything. So all the financial stuff's going to feed into that. How much we're paying the SFA to use Hampden. How that impacts on Clermont's budget. So it just starts dominoing into that. And you look at last night, we got out of the Champions League, albeit for a referee, but also then the Hampden factor comes into it. When listening to guys that were at the game, no real atmosphere there. Ibrox has been a fortress, and all this stuff, when you're getting beat and things aren't going well off the park, start to add up and they start to be using the evidence against you.
Right. Let's the stadium stuff, because I don't know enough about construction and deals and stuff like that, and I feel as if that's just taken us away from the overall topic. And Robert, I'm coming straight back to you. The position that we're in right now, why are we in it?
Through years of just mismanagement, really. I don't want to sort of go over what Connors went over there in terms of, hiring a managers. That's certainly one. Us as a support, I think, are guilty as well of not being patient. You hear often in Glasgow, you don't get time, but somebody's going to need time. If people are hell bent and saying, right, I'm done with Clermont, there's no playing style, let's get him out, then I'd like to say to them, who's going to take it? There's
Can I just interrupt, Robert? Sorry, there's just been a statement made by Rangers with regards to the Old Firm allocation. I think this was mentioned earlier on today, but it's a very, very, very brief and short statement, so I will read it out quickly. Rangers was today informed that Celtic will make no allocation for away fans for the September Old Firm game. The allocation to be implemented by both clubs was clear, and Rangers was taking... Who wrote this? And Rangers was taking all steps towards fulfilling that agreement. In the meantime, we can confirm that no away allocation will apply for the January Old Firm fixture at Ibrox. This is consistent with the reciprocity, I don't know that word, embedded in the agreement reached between the clubs and the SPFL. We, first of all, unless I've read that completely wrong, and I might have, by the way, and I apologise if I have, but see if I haven't, whoever wrote that needs a lesson in how to write in English. Connor, I'll come to you on this. I don't know how many times, as a Rangers podcast, we have every right to be annoyed and angry and fed up with a lot of the clubs in Scottish football, right? Yes, back then we made mistakes, but people tried to jump on our heads and on our throats and tried to put us out of business, and clubs were reveling in it, right? So if any fan base has got a right to be annoyed and pissed off at the majority of Scottish football, I think it's us. But on the Rangers Rabble, we have people who are passionate Scotland supporters, and we have people who like the SPFL, the league that we play in, and we have people who want the SPFL to be the best league that it can be, to be the most competitive league that it can be. And we have people, two of which are on the pod tonight, who take time out of their own lives to not just do this Rangers podcast, but also to do an SPFL show. And Robert's got his own Tunnel podcast, which focuses on English and Scottish football. Right, so Robert and Connor are two people who want to see Scottish football flourish, along with many other Rangers supporters in Scotland. So Connor, see this toing and throwing back and forth. I'm going to slap you in the back, then you slap me in the back, and then we're going to have these kid-on fights to appease both sets of supporters. This nonsense between Rangers and Celtic regarding allocations, this is showing Scottish football up to be tin pot, to be what it is.
Yeah, it is, and it's been that way for a number of years now. I think, listen, we can't shy away from the fact, and we have to be honest enough to admit on this podcast, that the whole allocation thing it started with us. We made the decision at first to cut the allocation. Now, we were perfectly entitled to do that, but obviously ever since then, when there's been an opportunity to put the boot in, they have not missed it. And that's what's happened here again. I think I don't know why they had to make this announcement now. We're sat here in August. The understanding is, and I cautiously use that term because, as Robert touched on, we're not really that sure. But the understanding is we should be back in Ibrox by sort of October time. So that should then have absolutely zero bearing on anything to do with the January fixture, because by then, they cited that they didn't believe we'd have the safety precautions in place that were agreed upon. But how can they make that decision for us right now? They can't. What they've decided to do, in my opinion, is to a degree score cheap points. And I don't blame them, because we've done it in the past. It's sad, but it's the state of affairs that the big two in particular are in when they're at each other's throat. And, here we are again after getting that agreement, which hasn't even fully been implemented. We're now going to get the first two Old Firm derbies of the season. No away fans yet again. It is getting beyond a joke. It really is. I think I look at England, I look at the Premier League, I look at the atmospheres and all the big derbies they have down there. We claimed for years how the Old Firm derby is bigger than any derby that the English can throw up, because of everything that surrounds it, the history behind it, the heated nature of it, even the hatred to a degree that some people have, all of that, and the sum of all its parts coming together. It's not really there anymore in terms of that raw atmosphere in the ground, and it damages not just both clubs, but it damages Scottish football as a whole. I mean, make no mistake about it, when that agreement was made last year, that was done in part with Sky Sports, because Sky Sports were sick fed up of this as well. And they'll not be happy in the slightest that they're getting, yet again, a lesser product than what they should be getting. They're not necessarily on the park. They could be great games of football. Not saying they will be, but they could be. But they're not getting what an Old Firm derby should bring. And that's problematic. That's why the Edinburgh derby, is taking that mantle for the atmosphere. It's why when Hearts cut away allocations to Rangers and Celtic, they made sure that they said that Hibs were going to get that extra allocation when they came, because they saw it as an opportunity to, promote what they were selling, promote their product. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. As I say, there's an element of point scoring. As much as I'd love to sit here and just fully point fingers at them, we have to take responsibility as well, because it is in part due to issues of our own creation that we're in this situation as well.
When are the governing body going to take responsibility, though, Connor? When are the SFA or the SPFL going to jump in and say, right, enough of this nonsense? You're going to give them that many. You're going to give them that many, and that's the end of it. We'll decide what's safe and what's not safe. It's not for Celtic to decide, because ultimately over the last 10 years, we've not been able to see eye to eye in this, and it's just getting absolutely ridiculous. Gaza Legend there saying we don't need Celtic and Ibrox. Fact, I beg to disagree. That the product needs it. The atmosphere needs it. I get, obviously, there's people in those seats, and that's probably another argument for another day, but I just think as a spectacle, it's meant to be the best, derby in Europe. If not, I would say the only thing that could rival it is River Plate and Boca Juniors for atmosphere. We need to
that's mental. That's not even that.
We've got to be selling it on the back of that, and if you've just get, we've seen it ourselves. Full houses at Celtic and Rangers. It was okay at the start, but now we've had enough. We want it back. We want it back how it was, or as close to. And if the government body are not going to jump in and just leave it to Celtic and Rangers, I don't think we're ever going to get an agreement here. It just seems to be going on and on and on.
I'm well aware that the whole allocation thing started with Rangers. We cut the allocation. I get that, and I'm not sitting here saying that if Celtic never get any fans at Ibrox and we never get any fans at Parkhead, then I'm gutted, I'm raging. I'm not. What I'm saying is make a decision and then stick to that decision. None of this headlines of, oh, no fans, oh, fans, oh, no fans. Oh, make a decision, and then once that decision's made, do not renege on it, and let's try and get back to just talking about football. Well, obviously, we're talking about more than that. But that's the whole. And by the way, Colin, I'm going to take you up on your point about atmosphere down south. The atmosphere down south is horrendous, right? It's all plastic travel from abroad fans. That's all English football is. I won't hear anything different. Don't ever try and compare English atmospheres to Scottish atmospheres. It's just a fake game down there.
Well, listen, I think there's an element of that down south.
No, it's a fake game in England. That's all it is.
Well, it's not fully a fake game. There are still
It is.
very much fans who are dyed in the wool and entrenched. I mean,
Of
you
course.
can't tell me when you watch a North London derby there isn't a real passion and a real dislike.
No, but see if you listen really closely.
Arsenal
See if you listen really closely during the North London derby, right? See when you hear the chanting, it's "Where's the cheese sandwiches? Where's the cheese?" That's what the chant is in the North London
I
derby.
think to throw that over the whole English football, I know we're going down a different avenue here, is a bit naive. I think that the EFL, there's a lot of
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think the EFL's got a lot of holes.
And I'll tell you right now, I can tell you for a fact, as a Newcastle man, you go into the Stadium of Light or St James's Park, and Sunderland and Newcastle are playing each other. That is, tens of thousands of people for the North East who genuinely hate each other for that.
Right, we'll get away from English football, and I'll give you.
When you look at it though, we have to examine.
He's backpedaling, Connor.
No.
We are in a situation partly of our own making, because let's be honest here, if we hadn't made such a cock up with the stadium construction, Celtic would have had no reason or no excuse that they could throw in there to do this. We've handed them the ammunition, as we always do. And that's the frustration. Every single time we can make an arse of something and hand them ammunition to take the piss or to score points or to do whatever, we do it. We hand it to them in a silver plate. That has to stop. And that started, I'm afraid to say, with allocation, that started with Dave King. He handed them ammunition in a silver plate. He allowed them to write the narrative when he cut the allocation, because the narrative that got written was it was cut because we couldn't handle the fact we were only winning Old Firm games and we couldn't handle their fans celebrating in our ground, so the allocation was cut. I don't know that was the truth behind that at all. But whatever the reason was, it handed them that ammunition and it made us look like we were running scared. It made us look stupid. And that isn't the mentality of any fans, by the way. None of the fans have ever ran scared for it. That's why we still turn up, we still watch the games, and we still believe. The issue is the club makes us look like fools on a consistent basis with their decisions. And yes, Celtic are scoring their cheap points, but I don't trust that our board wouldn't have done the same to them if the shoe was in the other foot. I really don't.
That's when you choose to finish your point. Jeez, I mean, come on, man, that was horrendous. You seen me picking up the juice. Danny O'Donnell, rumour on Twitter, the board will hold an emergency meeting on Friday. Are they saying goodbye? Please, folks, right? That might very well be true, right? But it might also be one pile of nonsense. See right now, and I'm not having a go at you, Danny, because you put a lot of good points in. And
he's a lovely chanter as well, Danny O'Donnell.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, I'm thinking about Daniel O'Donnell now. But listen, there's going to be so many rumours flying about Rangers over the next few weeks. Ignore them all. See until something's announced, don't believe anything. Absolutely don't believe anything. Right. The crux of this show tonight, Robert, is about the board. Right. Now, I'm going to ask this question, and I don't want to see in the comments when I look back at this later tonight or tomorrow, people giving me jip for this question. Right. Number one, are we in as bad a position as what a lot of people are saying? And are we, and I say we because I'm one of the ones who has been doing it, are we targeting the board unfairly? Have they messed up as much as what we think they have? Or is it simply because a Michael Beale not winning trophies and fans are just annoyed? I'm just trying to put context and fairness on it.
I think they have messed up, yeah, because look, I don't want to paint Dave King as a superhero, right? However, he seemed to understand that, first and foremost, it was about making Rangers successful on the pitch, getting us back to lifting trophies. And I don't feel that this board have the same sort of passion for that. They seem to be more driven by commerce and making money and ways to make more money and ways to make more money from the support. I don't feel, and they're not backing the manager in terms of, giving him what he needs to make us successful on the park, albeit they've given him this bumper new contract, and there's no way he's getting punted as far as I'm concerned. It would just cost us too much. If you can't play Yanis Hadji for an extra few bob, then there's no way they're going to sack Philip Clement and all his staff and pay that one out. So they've just made numerous mistakes. Before you broke that statement, you were saying to me, what's happened. For me, it's the way they're managing the actual football side of it. Contracts that we've been giving out, ridiculous. Some of the contracts we've been giving out, reported contracts, you'd say. The way we're missing the boat of being too sentimental and keeping a hold of players, and the list is endless when it comes on to actually stuff on the football park. And now being left what we're left with, that squad just doesn't look capable. You're looking at it last night. There's guys on the bench that could come on and change a game, not being used. You're looking at the starting lineup. James Tavernier still in it. Body language doesn't look great. He looks like he shouldn't be anywhere near at the moment. There's just loads and loads of stuff on the park. I mean, the off the field stuff I can't control. When I say I'm not any expert, but that then once you're not doing it on the park, that becomes a highlight. That becomes full focus. So it's not great for the board. And as I say, see if you get beat at the weekend and it piles on more, they will turn out. I think something's going to happen because it seems to be bubbling away.
Well, Ross Wilson in the comments, no, not our former director of football, although it might be. And I'm not going to pull the comment up because I know what he's trying to do, but I'm going to read it out anyway because it's quite funny. Board should just ignore the rabble and we'd still have GVB as manager and we'd be successful by now. So apparently we have all sorts of power. That anything that we say, the board seem to listen to and they make decisions based on that. See if that was the case, by the way, I'd be a millionaire if that was the case, if I had that kind of power. But Connor, what I'm trying to do is build context, because I do firmly believe that pretty much, I mean, apart from the stuff that's happened in the background that we don't get to see, and there's people that find out, there's people that can find out all sorts of stuff that's going on at the club, right? And I don't know how to do it, but they find it out. But they could be doing amazing things in the background in terms of the stadium, getting it up to scratch and doing all that sort of stuff, right? We don't know about that. See the stuff that's facing us, that we see manager decisions, transfers, coming out and speaking to us. Every single thing that I have seen that this board has done has been a failure. Unless you can point out to me something that this board have done since they've come into this club that has been beneficial to us on the park, because I, at this moment, cannot think of one.
Well, they fronted the money to sign Jack Butland. That's about all I can think of. It's not the most vigorous defence you've ever seen in your life. No, they have. They've made consistent mistake after mistake, and they've not. The issue is, right, I can accept making mistakes. It happens, right? People are human beings. You can make mistakes. I can understand them making the real mistake in terms of they obviously drank the Kool-Aid, right? What I can't understand is letting the man run the full club top to bottom. What I can't understand is not learning from that mistake so that the next time that you make appointments, that you make sure you've got everything that you need in place for it. Bisgrove obviously left, which has left a hole there, which still needs filled. Hopefully that might get filled in the coming weeks. And it's this constant nonsense that seems to happen. And it's not just that, it's the total lack of communication with the fans. I mean, we had been taught, if they were really listening to the Rabble, they would know that we had been saying for...
Well, they would know that we know nothing. That's what they would know.
Well, apparently not. But they would know that we sat, you look at the stadium, how many pods had we done in the stadium since late May when it came out? John Bennett only made a statement a couple of weeks ago. And we've all been calling for it. Rangers fans been saying, what the hell is going on? Why are we not hearing anything from him? We didn't even hear much from him when Bisgrove left. That's not how you ingratiate yourself with fans. So don't get me wrong, the interview he ended up doing in the end really wasn't a great look. And the sooner he gets another sort of CEO in there that can actually take care of that sort of stuff, the better. But whether it's that, whether it's hiring external recruitment companies that bring in a marketing manager that turns out to be a dyed-in-the-wool Celtic fan who's made sectarian slurs against the club, I mean, come on, do your bloody homework. This isn't rocket science. It really isn't. It's absolutely do your homework. And they haven't done that in too many of the situations. What I will say, because I think it's important to come back on it when Robert was mentioning Dave King and stuff like that, I think there's an element of rose-tinted spectacles when people look back on Dave King. Dave King certainly ultimately was the man that managed to lead us to Stockton 10 in a row. He was the man at the helm, fair enough. But how many mistakes did he make? Dave King signed brought Pedro Caixinha in, who spent ridiculous amounts of money bringing in utter garbage and players who are well over the hill. The exceptions being, I think, Daniel Candeias and Alfredo Morelos. He was the one that allowed the whole Mark Warburton debacle to go down when he basically kicked us in the teeth and buggered off to Nottingham Forest, which I don't necessarily blame him for. But again, all under Dave King's stewardship. Graham Murray was in charge how many times under his stewardship, because there was a lot of chaos at that time. So it wasn't all roses and sunshine. Under Dave King, there was a lot of mistakes made there as well. He also, like John Bennett, wasn't always great when he came out and said things, because sometimes he said things that just made you absolutely shake your head or, want to rip your eyeballs out, because some of the things he came out with was nonsense stuff that, people at the top of clubs shouldn't be saying. He comes out with things saying, for example, that I think when they were on something like 6 or 7 in a row, he said, as far as I'm concerned, they're only on 2 because that's when we'd come into the league. Okay, fans might say that, but that's nonsense stuff. That's no stuff boards should be saying. So just to contextualise that there, Dave King, yes, cared and was desperate for us to win that league, and I totally believe that he certainly cared more about it than John Bennett, but he made a hell of a lot of mistakes as well that made us look rather foolish.
Sorry, my throat there. Look, yeah. Because what I don't want this to just become is us three shouting and screaming about how bad the board are and blah blah blah. And one thing Connor mentioned there, Robert, came out today on socials as it does. I don't even know if it was a marketing manager or a commercial manager, or it was just somebody who was brought in to advise or whatever, right? And Stuart, part of the Rabble as well, made the point that he's not really bothered about this in terms of the bigger picture at Ibrox right now, right? But obviously, we bring somebody in to do a job at Rangers, and within 5 minutes, somebody's checked their social media, and this has to be qualified and on. Somebody commented saying, Martin, will you stop qualifying everything? Well, unfortunately, in this day and age of wokeness, you actually have to qualify everything. I don't care what team somebody supports when they come in to do a job for Rangers, if they're the right person for the job and are going to do it properly. But what I won't have is if I've got a choice. What I don't want, Robert, is somebody coming into the club to do a job for Rangers, regardless of how good they are, when there's sectarian slurs on their socials about our football club. And just to further add to that, and the point that Stuart made to us was that the Rangers board wouldn't have appointed this person; it would have been a recruitment team. But when things are going as bad as what they are, and fans are picking up on everything, this is another stick to beat them with.
Listen, the timing could not be any worse, could it? As I say, in the aftermath of last night, then that breaks as well. And it's, if supporters can find that evidence quickly, then you have to answer. You have to ask why, whoever's vetting these guys, whether it is a external company or Rangers themselves, can't find it. So not a great look. Another one to add on to the list, but I think, as Stuart Wright said, it's minimal in terms of the bigger picture. We've just got bigger fish to fry. Connor's on about this, Bennett and King, and we can't go back and forth with that. We've got John Bennett at the helm now. We're asking why, the board aren't coming out. I don't think the board know enough to come out. That's the trouble. That's what's worrying. I don't think they genuinely know, and what they do know, they're sure not willing to come out, because I don't think they can quantify it. So it is a worrying time. It really is a worrying time. Whether they're going to come out, they'll know the feel of the support now. Whether they've got people watching fan media or anything like that, they'll know how the support are feeling at the minute. So whether there's something
Rangers watch everything, Robert.
Well, good evening, Mr. Bennett. I would just say, they'll, if that is the case, then they will prepare something, I think, later on in the week, because they've got to. The supporters are demanding it. Worst case scenario of the weekend, and it adds to it. It could become really, really ugly. So, deep breath. But yeah, we're not in a great place. We're not in a great place. Martin, you asked, how we're going to get out of this, and where are we headed? I think it's got to be a long-term plan, whether it's with the board and the manager. But somebody's got to come in that's got a bit more of football know-how and can manage the areas that have been let down, because we've been let down badly in the park. This whole thing, don't want to delve into it too much, I know we're talking about other things, but the whole thing with Cantwell and Hadji and putting them into the B team, and when you look at the team last night, they could have been on that bench, could have been offering something. So it's all well and good they want to leave, that's fine, but you just keep that under wraps and say, right, well, until you don't move until we get somebody in for you, you're going to contribute, we're paying your wages. Just looks like we've shot ourselves in the foot there. So there's just loads and loads of little things that are adding up to what is this massive disaster that we're talking about tonight.
It is, and Connor, just finishing up on the board before we move on to the manager, and we'll maybe have a quick discussion about last night. This isn't a discussion around, right, okay, so what do we do then? We sack them and we bring somebody else in. It's like a manager. We sack a manager, we bring another manager in. That player's not very good, right? Well, we'll try and sell him and we'll bring another player in. From where I'm sitting, Graham Souness was right. From where I'm sitting, from what Graham Souness said in TalkSport, they are men who can run a business, but they know nothing about football. That would be like one of us three going and being the chairman of Rangers. We wouldn't have a clue what we were doing. We would just say, right, sign him. We'd be the opposite to them. We would do it badly the opposite way, right? Because we're just fans, right? They are clearly not football men. So the big question is, how does this fix itself? What is the simplest fix, right? Because Douglas Park and John Bennett are not stupid men, right? Douglas Park's not worth hundreds of millions because he's stupid, right? He's ran a company and various companies for years and he's made himself hundreds of millions. John Bennett is a very, very intelligent man. He's worth quite a few million as well. So if they're sitting in the boardroom right now, looking at all the evidence that they've got and said, look, on January we effed up, on February we messed up, and on October we've messed up, we need to stop messing up. So Connor, how do they stop messing up?
Just an easy question then. I mean, look, I think first and foremost, you get your appointments right. I think whoever this new CEO that's going to come in is going to be a real crucial appointment, possibly more important than prior CEO appointments, because normally right, when things are going well in the park and you're winning things, you're not really normally that bothered by the appointment of a new CEO. It just sort of happens and you're like, okay, fair enough. But in times like this, it becomes very important. So that appointment has got to be the right one. It has to be somebody that can bring that counterbalance back into the club, that does understand the business of football and understands how you actually go and run a club and what you do. I absolutely, fully believe that. I also think it's time, again, whatever this is stuff they'll do when they have their meeting, I think it's time for them to actually sit down and work out what the actual plan is here. What's the plan for Rangers Football Club? What's the plan for the future? Not just
best in class, Connor. Best in class.
Oh yeah, but you've got to have a plan for how you're going to get there, and what's Bennett's plan as well. Because I tell you one thing that does happen: at any chairman and all the rest of it will always have their own exit strategies. They'll have a point where they go, I want to get this out there, and then pass the baton on. So what's that kind of plan looking like? I think there was a bit of long-term thinking in terms of when they gave Clement the contract extension. That certainly said that they were backing him to be in the dugout for the long haul, that they see him as a guy that can change things around on the park. But again, he can only do that if the board can find a way to give him the resources to do it. Because right now he said, one arm and half a leg tied behind his back. He can't. He's struggling in that aspect. And I think as well, I don't know what the situation is with Douglas Park, but I think you need to try and look at getting some new investors into the club as well. We need some new money, because I don't think Douglas Park's in any mood to keep opening the checkbook and parking much more cash. I think, that's got to be something you look at. Now, some people might say, bring in X players, or whatever. And I can understand that, but it doesn't always work, because whilst X players know football, they don't necessarily know enough about the actual wheelings and dealings of business that you've got to do when you're running a club, because that's the way it should be run. So I think that's the sort of stuff they need to do, and I think they need to ask a serious question. When John Bennett does, he needs to ask himself a serious question of whether, am I the right man for this job? Is it in the best interest of the club for me to keep going? Do I believe in my heart of hearts I can actually take this club to where it should be going to? If he's got any doubt about that, then he needs to look for a replacement. If he believes that, great, go and put your plan in place and implement it, and we all hope that it goes as best as possible. Because I'm finishing this, I'll tell you now, and I said it on a pod a couple of weeks ago, if Clement is sacked this season, then the board or John Bennett have to go as well, because it will be the third manager in 3 years that they've had to terminate, and it will tell you that their decision making hasn't been good enough. And to me, that's the next natural step if you keep doing that.
Right. Okay, on that though, Robert, right, if they sack Clement, they have to go. And when I asked Connor that question, Mark Doyle's answer was leave. Right? There's not a queue around the corner of people looking to take over the reins at Ibrox. Right? Scottish football is not appealing to people outside of Scotland. Right? So unless there's another multi-millionaire, close to a billionaire owner out there who wants to come in and buy Rangers and deal with all the issues that board's going to leave them, the board can't just walk away. We can't just sack the board. We need to make sure that there's somebody out there who wants to step into those shoes and take that on. And we don't have a Dermot Desmond. We don't have a multi-billionaire to run our football club. It's not as easy, Robert, as just saying, right, get them out. As much as we would maybe want that, it's not as easy as that.
No, and listen, especially not at a time like now where there's just so much to clear up, so much mess at the minute. You couldn't just walk out in that and leave that in somebody else's hands. I would take you to task on the fact you're saying that, there's not much interest in Scottish football. You look at St John's, who's got a new American owner. I know it's not on that level. There was interest in Motherwell from an American as well. So there's people out there. It's how you source that. Rangers is obviously a bigger operation. It's going to demand more investment, certainly. But it's whether the men that matter are actually looking and seeking that out at the moment. I don't know if that's the case.
Robert, sorry, I want to cut in, and I want you to come back on this as well and finish off what you were saying. I'll re-emphasise what I meant then. My apologies. There's no owners out there, I would imagine, who have the finance available. It's all right going and buying Dundee and buying Motherwell and buying Dundee United and buying whoever in Scotland. It's a completely different kettle of fish buying Rangers.
And that's it. I'm saying it's on a bigger scale. Rangers on tour, it's a great point there. The big question is, do they want to sell? I don't think so. I think there's a kudos about it at the minute, especially with John Bennett. Connor asked there, he's got to ask himself if he's the man. That would mean you're sort of delving into the man's integrity, and I don't know him well enough to make that judgment. So, as you say, the CEO is a massive appointment. You don't talk about that if you're winning on the pitch, blah, blah, blah. But that's because your CEO is probably doing his job right. That's why you're not talking about him. So, it's the board's a difficult one. As you say, you can't just rip it up and say, right, out you go on the Friday and somebody will be in the Monday like a manager. So the board have got to try and stay in place and rectify the wrongs. In terms of what Connor said there about the board would have to go if Clement goes. That's probably why they've get back to him and given him this new contract, told him he's probably going to be in charge. As somebody said earlier, they're almost hiding behind him. And I'll carry that by saying, see if you do sack him, who's taking it? As I say, Rangers have come out openly. The manager's come out openly. There's no money to spend. You're not playing at Ibrox. It's not a great proposal at the moment. So, and who's going to do a better job? So, I think at the moment you've got to just trust the manager in that sense. Trust his process. He's been honest in his assessment and said, "Look, October, November, where you might see or you should see the best of this squad, but he's going to need reinforcements and backing. And are we going to get that? Having just missed out on that money last night." Connor said, "What's the plan?" Well, the manager came out and said the plan's been set back a couple of years because we've not qualified for the Champions League.
It absolutely has, and I'm going to come on to that in a second.
And you need to have a plan B. You need to have a plan B. You can't throw your eggs in that basket when you know you've not invested in the squad properly. You know how difficult that's going to be. A plan B should be in place to mitigate what happens if we don't get to the Champions League. That it would be criminal to me if they don't have some sort of plan B in place. That really would be criminal.
Well, there shouldn't really be any discussion about the manager being sacked anyway, because the board have just gave him a new deal, which again was another confusing thing at a time when people weren't too happy. I don't know why.
But there is talk about it, Martin, because some sections of sport have had enough.
Yeah, I'm going to come on to that. And by the way, the point that I'm trying to make is that the guys that went and bought Man City, right? There's a reason why people invest in English football, and that's because of the reach that English football has. That's the only reason people invest in it, was because the people that run the Premier League, the people that started the Premier League, are extremely smart people, and they got that league up to the standard that it's at in terms of the viewing figures and the amount of people that watch it and the reach that it has. That's the only reason people invest in English teams. Do you think Saudi Arabia cares about the UK? Do you think Americans care about the UK? No. They're going in there for political reasons and for other reasons as well. The people that own Liverpool, they want money. The people that own Man U take money out of the club, right? That's why they're in there. The Saudis are in at Man City. The Saudis are in at the boxing for political reasons, right? That's the only reason there's investment in English football. Scottish football can't offer that. We can't offer that, right? All we can offer you is you're going to come in, you're going to own the club, and you're lucky if you break even if we do well in Europe. That's all we can offer somebody who isn't attached to Rangers Football Club, right? And by the way, you might get seen on Sky Sports, and if you come in, you we dribs and drabs here for England. People would rather go and invest in Championship clubs down south than come and invest in Scottish clubs. That's all I'm saying. In terms of the level of owner that we need, that's why it's extremely difficult, and that's why we're stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the board. On to the manager. You have mentioned the manager, Connor. A lot's been made about his record. A lot's been made about what he inherited when he took over, etc., etc. We can't judge him because it's Michael Beale's players, etc., etc. Right? You can always judge a Rangers manager at whatever point you want as a supporter. You're well within your right to judge any manager that you can. But Connor, I don't like people saying it's Michael Beale's players. It's Michael Beale's players. Blah blah blah. His record at Rangers so far, albeit it picked up at the very beginning and then it tailed off. My argument would always be about a manager. See if he picks up a group of bad players from a previous manager, or he picks up a group of average players who weren't playing for a previous manager. A good manager, a talented manager, a motivational manager will make the players play to their maximum level, right? Is Clement getting the maximum level out of this current crop of players that he's got? And is the players that he's bringing in at a good enough standard so far to take this club forward?
Well, right now he's not getting the absolute maximum out of him. No, he did when he first came in. Obviously, get the new manager bounce and things like that. He managed to get us on an unbelievable run, a run that I don't think any of us believed it was possible to get on. And we got into a position where, had we done our jobs right, we actually should. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we actually should have won that league last season, because after he came in, he got us on top, and then we faltered. When you lose a game against Ross County and then you drop points to Dundee the game after, I'm not being funny when I say this, but if the only thing standing between you and solidifying your spot at the top of the table is Ross County and Dundee, I'm sorry, but you really have got to win those games. And that's been problematic. Obviously, the record in direct head-to-heads against Celtic not been good enough either. He's not managed to get the most out of us there. I will say that John Lundstrom absolutely sold him down the Clyde at Parkhead the last time out, to be fair. But I think he has to start being braver in his selections for me. I think he uses an abundance of caution. I think it comes down to when he first came in and he spoke about how he wasn't happy with the injury problems that we had and all the issues here. With that, he was going to look at the medical staff and changing that, which I think he has been doing. But there's an element that just you kind of think, what is the plan? You look at Danilo, and I don't know if anybody's seen the clip of him walking into Hampden when he does not look comfortable. It looks like he's limping. It looks like there's something wrong. Now, Clement claimed that that's just how he walks. Maybe it is, but it does look like there's an issue there. And if that's the case, why is he even on the bench? These are legitimate questions, and I don't think he deals well when he's asked it, because I think there's too often a tendency for him to bat it away by saying that, well, you're not manager, you're not a player, you don't really understand these things. Well, okay, make us understand then. Make us understand why Vaclav Cherny apparently isn't fit to start that game yesterday, but can come on literally for the second half. If he can come on for the full 45 the second half, why can you not play him for the first hour then? Why can you not start the game and give him that other 70 minutes and then take him off if you need to? It's things like that, because if we are to do anything this season, then a guy like Vaclav Cherny, we need him in the squad playing at the levels he can, because he is going to be one of our more important players. Same with Conor Barron, who I must say has been a real bright spark, for us this season, and that's been good. I think that he has to do that again. He also, like I said earlier, when you sign somebody like Igamani, why is he not fit? It's not illegitimate to ask these questions in a manager. He should be able to answer them. So I do think there's an element of that. But I will say, people talk about how he inherited a shambles. He did, for what Michael Beale left. So did Gerrard. But I tell you one thing, Steven Gerrard won one trophy in the 3 years he was at Rangers. Okay, it was the most important one because he won the league title to stop 10 in a row. Philippe Clement won his first trophy within 2 months, 3 months of being Rangers manager. If you're looking at it from a purely standpoint of what's he won, well, he's already won a trophy in a quicker time than the last three managers did. That doesn't justify his performance in the league towards the end of the season, because that was really poor. And it does, give you pause for worry this season. But the flip side of that is he did say that he felt we would be looking much better sort of September, October time. Now, that might well be the case.
No, my caveat to that, Connor, is though that, like you say, Steven Gerrard won the league and he had Celtic's number.
Well,
Gerrard had Celtic's number.
That is it. We actually, it became a point where, it was we were only scared to go to Parkhead. We were going there and turning them over. We just don't have that now. But
to be fair, the one thing I would say to just slightly in defence there, though, come on, Steven Gerrard didn't have to deal with a Brendan Rodgers Celtic team for very long. The first time he bet Brendan Rodgers, left. After that, Clement has had to come in facing a team who'd come off the back of Ange Postecoglou, instilling that winning mentality back in them. Because after the COVID season, when we won the league and bet them in every game, barring one, which was a draw, we had got into their heads and we had got the number. But Postecoglou came in and totally changed that around and asserted a dominance over us again. And then Rodgers, because he happened to be available at the time and there was a bit of fortune, he came in and he already knew how to negotiate that game. The guy lost one game, and I think he drew something like 2 in the 60th.
He only lost one game because he bolted at the first sign of a challenge. Let's be brutally honest about it.
Might be true.
Right, Steven Gerrard had us. Steven Gerrard had us, right? Not fear and having a Celtic Football Club's number after them winning 8 leagues in a row.
Yeah.
9 leagues in a row, or 8.5, or whatever you want to say, right? Steven Gerrard then came in and had a number. I don't want this to be a Steven Gerrard debate anyway. Robert, you were kind of shaking your head a wee bit there.
Yeah, because I think it is pertinent to bring in Gerrard into this when you're talking about Clement, in the sense that Gerrard had a style of play. Like, you could see what the team were trying to do. I don't really know what Clement's trying to do with this team other than get it up very, very quickly. That three in midfield for Gerrard were, when you had Jack, Davis, Kamara, the work they done was absolutely phenomenal. So I think Clement needs to change his style. I don't think playing a number 10 is working for Rangers at the minute. We've got Tom Lawrence in there. I don't see anything coming from it. I'd rather have Barron and Diamandi a bit more advanced and maybe sitting and Stelling in behind. But whether that's something he's planning on doing, I don't know. But I think bringing Gerrard in is pertinent, as I say, because I think a lot has gone wrong since he went away. Somebody said in the comments, fix the roof when the sun is shining. That was one of his famous quotes as he partied. We didn't back him, then we ended up backing managers thereafter. So it's just a strange one. I think we've massively missed the boat. And as much as we're saying back the manager, let's not go in on him too early. He's not been back by the board, and he's been given a bit of a raw deal. See if he can beat Celtic. That's where you're judged here. If you're no good twos, if you can't beat Celtic, and they really want to go, years of their dominance again under Brendan Rodgers and just no lay a glove on them, because I don't know about you guys, but I've got Celtic support with family and friends who they're at me every day for all this. People can say, I don't care what Celtic do, but I think it's that without each other, it's nothing. So you've got to care what they do, because you want to try and get one over them. It's really, really important. So is Clement going to be the man to get the better of Brendan Rodgers? We'll see in a couple of weeks. I'm not entirely looking forward to it, but we will be judged in that game massively.
Yeah, can I just say Eck in the comments, just quickly, sorry Conor, I'll just say Eck in the comments. I was being a wee bit facetious there about that Brendan Rodgers comment. I was just trying to have a wee laugh at a situation, Eck, that we're not currently enjoying. Sorry, Conor.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Firstly, before I do, Stephen Fate, I agree with you, mate. If he plays Chelsea and he gets injured, he gets criticised for that, but sometimes you've got to take the risk, and that was the point I was making. You can't have that players
play your best players for the start.
Well, exactly. You can't just wrap them cotton wool for everything. You can't manage minutes the whole season. But the thing, again, I hate to sound like I'm jumping on Clement's defence here. I'm not, because I have a lot of frustrations with him myself. But Clement has had an unbelievable amount of bad luck against Celtic as well. You can't discount as being irrelevant. There's about 4 goals disallowed against Celtic last season. 2 justified, 2 on the wire. He said players like Lundstrom throw him under a bus, get themselves sent off when you just get back into a game. Balogun obviously gets sent off as well. In a prior game, I don't remember Steven Gerrard having that level of bad luck against them when nothing just seems to be going for you. Now, that doesn't excuse the way he's set up in those games and his tactics, because the one thing he's got wrong is he's never started those games properly and on the front foot. It's always took us a while to build into them. And by that point, we've ended up being behind before we start playing. That absolutely lies with him. There's no question about that. And he has to, as Robert says, I totally agree, the number 10 thing isn't working. He has to look to change that. But like I say, I do have some sympathy, because, to get that level of bad luck, it is really frustrating for him. And he must feel that. You look at that game at Ibrox, and you can debate whether it's the right or wrong decision. But when we scored that penalty and then thought we'd equalised about 2 minutes later, if that goal stands, we're probably going to win that game, because everybody was up. That get disallowed, and then it just seemed to deflate things a bit again. And then, eventually we got equalised and ended up, behind and again. So it is things like that. Absolutely, he's got to look at tactically as well. But he's been unlucky to a degree.
Listen, look, for whatever my opinion's worth, and I know it's not worth much. The manager needs time. It's as simple as that. Even I don't want to bring English football back into it, Robert, and I know that Arteta hasn't quite yet won the league with Arsenal, but they were poor. They were really poor under Arteta in the beginning as he was building, and now they look like a team that can actually go on and challenge Manchester City. Now, I'll actually bring the question to you if I can find it from our very own Ian. Here it is. Here's and this bleeds into me mentioning Arteta. Here's one for you. Is it a fair expectation for us to demand Clement wins the league this year? Before you answer, Robert, I can just, everybody that's watching this, I can see them screaming at the computer or at the telly or whatever they're watching this on. Or Rangers Football Club, first is everything, second's nothing, you've got to win the league. But see if we just take a wee step back, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, Robert. The state we're in with the board, the state we're in with that football team, the fact that we're now out of the Champions League, and we'll quickly discuss that before we go in terms of how far we're now behind in finance. Should we be demanding that we win the league this season?
Listen, I think as far as if you're still in it, then you've got to keep believing, you've got to keep demanding. Of course, I think we're sure he'll be demanding that. Sure, as a manager, he's not going into the training ground every day and going, we might need to get a buy this year. So I'm sure he'll be pushing them, he'll be demanding. I think as a support, yeah, we can demand that. I don't think that's a bridge too far.
Is it realistic for us to expect to go on and win the league this season? Is it realistic?
Well, that's a different question. It depends how you see. Are you an optimist? Are you a pessimist? I think that's down to the individual. I would suggest that it's not realistic. Again, shoot me down if you want, but I'm looking at Celtic and looking. They've just spent near on £10 million on a striker. They're probably going You're probably going to get all this Champions League money. They're probably going to sell their star man for another king's ransom. So that sort of plays in the back of your mind as the gap is widening, and we seem to be regressing somewhat in terms of recruitment and the squad depth and strength. So obviously there are concerns. I get that, and I'm certainly in that bandwagon. But I dare say, expectation, to win the league is not a bad thing. Whilst you're still in it, why would you surrender it at this point? We're 2 games deep. We've not yet played them. Listen, see if I'm on your reaction for the Old Firm game when we get beaten. I might be saying a different thing, but as it stands tonight, we're still in it, and I wouldn't be throwing up any white flags as of yet.
It's not a case, Connor, of throwing up any white flags, and maybe I should have used the second question instead of using the first question. But from where we are sitting right now, right, things feel bleak. Everything feels bleak, and the Champions League loss. All right, there's circumstances to it, right? But if we look at the recruitment, if we look at the way the club's being run, nobody's happy. I would probably even put Clement in that bracket and probably not being happy behind the scenes. So I think it is quite a fair question to ask at this juncture. Is it realistic with the way that we feel we're being run, with the way that the squad looks, with how Clement's managed so far? Bearing in mind, like Robert says, we're up against a club who have just went out and spent nigh on £10 million on a striker when they've already got a top quality striker in Kyogo at their football club. They're probably going to bring in the best part of 20-25 million for a midfielder, and they'll be able to replace him probably as quickly as they sell him. So if we're looking at Celtic and we're looking at us as we sit right now and how we're feeling, is it realistic as supporters to think that we can still go on and win the league this season? Or is it a case of, shut up, Martin, we're Rangers, you've not got a clue what you're talking about, we're 2 games into the season, shut your mouth?
Well, I mean, look, I totally agree with what Robert said in terms of I'm not waving the white flags and chucking the towel in. Listen, I expect the Celtic probably will win the league. Not a hypocrite. Go and watch the SPFL show that we done predicting this. We all said that's what we thought would happen because of the state of things. I think that the thing to say as well is, and it pains me to say it because I've been a Rangers fan my whole life and I have seen the good, the bad and the ugly, and I've seen the spectacular for Rangers at times. We're not that Rangers anymore. When you say that we're Rangers, we should just do it. Right now, the current state of the club, we're a million miles away.
I would qualify what you mean by we're not that Rangers, because you know how that's going to be took out of context.
No. Yeah, what I mean is the Rangers teams of old, like what Walter Smith did when he came back for his second tenure and galvanised everybody and had that pure winning mentality that was always there, was always present in the building. Even under rougher patches like Paul Le Guen, there was still guys within there that still had that mentality of going on and wanting to win things and wanting to actually, we don't really have that right now, the way we are. We're not that club anymore. There's a reason why, the noughties in particular was a very, it chopped and changed throughout. They won 3 in a row, we won 3 in a row, they won 3, we won 3. It kind of went back and forward, because you always had the high points, you had lows, but there was always that hunger, there was always that belief, there was always, even at their very best under Martin O'Neill, as Rangers fans, despite, some of the issues in 02, for example, you still didn't fear playing against Celtic. You still didn't fear that you could mount a challenge. You still believed in that. I think that's slightly gone from us just now, just because of the nature of where things are. I think it should have been that. I think after we won 55, I think that was the moment for us to go and try and put the, I think someone said earlier, put the foot on their neck and really ramp up the pressure, go and make the right decisions at that time and capitalise. We could have maximised profits in certain players that we didn't. Even after the Europa League final run, the worth of some of our players after that we didn't sell would have been really, really good, because just naturally by getting to Europa League final, that rub increases your value. So it's things like that kind of take out. I don't expect us to win the league this season. I hope we do. I believe that there's a world in which we can. Because, like I say, you said last night, you can't rely on it, of course, but you also can't just assume that everything's going to be perfect for them and they're not going to slip up, they're not going to make any mistakes, they're going to win every game, and that's that. You have to believe that, one, we can put together a run, and two, there will be a drop-off at some point. Whether that happens or not, we'll wait and see, but I certainly hope it will. And I think Clement is as good a man as any to try and do that job, because I honestly, I think, well, and yourself touched on it earlier, I don't know who right now is out there that would come in and want the job or do a better job. So, yeah, do I expect it? No. Do I hope for it? Absolutely.
Martin, can I ask you, what's more likely? Rangers win the league or Connor is a meme by morning?
Oh, Connor's a meme by the morning. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. He's all over the Celtic Facebook and Twitter already, probably.
Well, to be fair, I did say when we won 55, so that really should tell me.
I know, but Connor, you know how the internet works. They'll just clip that wee 2 second bit you just said. That's all it is, and they'll put it out there. But in a way, I should actually start telling you guys before we come on. I'm going to say stuff that's a wee bit controversial, because it's great advertisement. It is superb advertisement, man.
Somebody's called him the meme machine.
He is. He absolutely is. Connor the meme machine. Listen, it helps promote the podcast. I'm happy with that. Just quickly, just very quickly, Robert, in terms of that defeat to Kiev, I'm not even going to discuss the game because we'll be here all night. Just in terms of the ramifications of that, I don't think we'd have went and beat Salzburg anyway, if I'm being brutally honest with you. But if we had beat Kiev, then we have the chance to go and beat Salzburg to get to the Champions League. How damaging financially and looking ahead to the future for bringing in players is that loss?
Well, the manager sort of said that Champions League money wasn't in the budget. So ideally the plan shouldn't change. You should still be able to go for the targets that we had before the game. However, had we got the money, then it might have changed in terms of bringing in one or two extra players that with the funds used. I still think there's that money could have been used probably in other areas as well. You look at the ticket sort of fiasco, we'll call it that. A drop off in supporters coming in, a drop off in revenue. I was heard today reported that the hospitality's not been affected. It's just the footfall sort of in the standard tickets that took a hit. Is that going to be the case in the Europa League? That'll be yet to be seen. But it certainly puts a more importance on the Europa League and making that a successful campaign if you're hell-bent on making as much money as possible this season. So be interesting to see how we get on, who we draw, where we're headed. Because obviously, again, that's like the Champions League. It's a different format. I think it's 4 at home and 4 away. So I would encourage people to try and get along if you can afford it, and if you can get there and you've got the time and try and back the team, because bigger picture, as we said, we've got to try and claw in as much money as we can to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, I get that, and I do actually very, very quickly want to discuss the crowds at Hampden as well, just very quickly. But Conor, I'll just come to you on that point, just for your have your say on it in terms of a setback and financially, not so much for this season, because I think what Rangers are doing, they're building, but in terms of targets that we maybe could have looked at even at that younger age bracket to bring in, just financially wise, has that loss, has Celtic gone on getting into the groups automatically getting that guaranteed 30 odd million, whatever it is us losing out on the 40 odd million that we would have got, has that set us back in terms of challenging?
Well, unquestionably it has set us back a bit, yeah. It allows them that bigger war chest, and we're having to sort of make do with what we can, for want of a better term there. Shortman, Harrods, we're Shortman Sainsbury's. There's still that is an issue, but
I can't even afford to shop in Sainsbury's, so that's no bad going.
Well, I was going to say Aldi, but that feels a bit harsh. Do you know what I mean?
Aldi.
Listen, absolutely. This is what I was going to say. You can still find a great deal in Aldi, and you can still maximise and get the most out of it. And I think that's what we have to do now. Listen, let's be honest here. When we did qualify for the Champions League, what did the club do with that money? They pissed it up against the wall. You know what I mean? So just having that money doesn't mean you'll make the right decision with it, and that was proven with the way that we ended up dealing with particularly the signings there, because that's what they threw at Beale, of course. So, listen, without flogging dead horses all the time, I think at the end of the day, we are where we are. I think, we've got to look around the club and go, right, can you bring more money in? Well, you've got saleable assets. You've got players there that you could probably get off the wage bill, help free up some cash. I think sometimes, and again, this is where I come back to getting new investors in, because I don't think Douglas Park's really going to do it. But I think it needs somebody to also take a bit of a gamble on us a bit as well, and put a bit of investment in. I mean, it's difficult because bear in mind, this is an important part. Just because they've got all the millions of money they've got, the new financial fair play rules and all the stuff that's come in, particularly domestically, means Celtic can't just go and spend 30 million quid. Do you know what I mean? There is a balance they have to make now, albeit when they bring in money for like a Matt Riley, that helps. But they're still not going to go and do that. They've been good at squirreling their money away. And personally, if they're spending the best part of 10 million quid bringing guys like Adam Ida in, then that shows it's not necessary that they're going to bring in world-class players all the time. So look, whatever they do. We have to make sure we make the best with the hand that we've been dealt. And this is what I said earlier, it's about having a plan B, and that should be there. See if we get another run in the Europa League, as we did in 2020. I'm not saying we're already, but imagine we're in the final in May next year. I don't think there's anybody going to be sitting still ruminating that we didn't get the Champions. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Ruminating?
It's not
ruminating?
Happen, right? But
that is a word, man. Ruminating.
We know who his guy is, Laurie Fideniston.
Can I just say, by the way, there's a guy in the comments and his name's Borussia München Flapjack. How good a name is that, by the way? Borussia München.
I've seen him before, old Borussia.
So good.
Connor, just on, I know it's the Rangers Rabble, but that Adam Ida signing to me just says that they're trying to appease Brendan Rodgers, because I don't think they'd have ideally liked to spend £9.5 million on a boy for Norwich that arguably they fluffed up when they done the loan deal and didn't get something in place where they could have got him probably at that point for about £3 million.
Maybe so, but he came in and helped him win the league. So there is that as well. Just very quickly then, Robert. Last night, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Not Hampden wasn't sold out. It wasn't dead by any stretch. I've seen people saying it was dead. There was still a lot of fans there. But see, going forward, do you expect until we're back at Ibrox that there will be quite a lot of empty seats in Hampden?
Aye, there'll be a fall off certainly, especially the way it's going. I mean, the weekend will be horrific. I really, it's a later kick-off, isn't it? Is it 5:30, 5:46 kick-off, something like that? So
I'm also talking for league games as well.
Aye, no, listen, as I say, I think there'll be a fall off. People just don't want to go there. You listen to phone-ins earlier on before we've come on here, and fans just saying it's murder to get out of. I think Ian Thompson, our new cult hero on the podcast, was saying that there was, ugly scenes in the way back. We're past 10 o'clock now. Bags of pish being thrown out of windows at people. It's not great viewing at all. So I just think people are turned off by it, completely turned off. Some people don't like the atmosphere. Some people don't like the location. It's just not great. People are creatures of habit. Yourself. People have got routines about how they get into the stadium and stuff. Do you know what something that's not been picked up actually is, the pubs and stuff around Ibrox. How are they feeling at the minute? Because they're up in the air. They're up in the air thinking, well, is it going to be October? Is it going to be January? I mean, that's their livelihood. For instance, the Loudon Tavern, I think, only opens when games are on at weekends. They'll be absolutely hurting these businesses all around Ibrox. I think they've got to be taken into consideration here as well, because they're getting absolutely pummeled by it, and it's out of their own hands. So it's a horrible situation. And I do just answer you back to your original question. The tickets are going to fall off massively because of that. I just think we're not in a great place. So the only way to turn that around is to maybe go to Parkhead and do them and lift morale, and then people might buy into it for the next few weeks before we return home. But again, that's still to be confirmed.
It is right, gents. That'll do. Unless you want to jump in there, Connor, to finish off.
No, just see to try and maybe it's the eternal optimist within me, right? But to try and end us on a more positive spin, because it's been a challenging one. What I would say is, with the expectations being as low as they are, and how people are feeling, just imagine how much better it will actually make you feel if we pull something after this season. Genuinely, I mean, I'm not saying we will, but just think that will feel a million times better if we somehow manage to pull this out of the bag and pull ourselves back for the depths. It's the only positive thing I can throw in, but sometimes you just got to try and just believe that you never know.
I would absolutely love it, by the way, at the end of the season, if we go on and win the league and people can clip these up and take the absolute piss out of me, go for it, do it. I would absolutely love it, because that then means that we've went on to win the league and we've been successful. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all that matters at this football club. Conor, Robert, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Loads more than usual, obviously, because of how most of us are feeling. And obviously, there's quite a few people tuned in who maybe not are of a Rangers persuasion. But thank you very much for your views and helping to share the podcast. It's greatly appreciated. Please make sure you give the show a like on YouTube if you enjoyed it. And if you don't like it, give it a dislike. Crack on. And subscribe if you want as well. That would be great. And of course, you can join the channel as a member to help support the podcast as we try and take it full time. Follow us on all socials, links for which are in the description. Many thanks to everybody who's tuned in tonight. Thank you for all your comments, for all your interactions, for getting involved. We've got a members show tomorrow night. I'm going to put a post out on the community page for members to get your questions in, for stuff you want spoke about that we don't normally speak about. We can take the members show in any direction that you want. And then we're back on Friday night to look ahead to the weekend's action. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll speak to you all very, very soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.